Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දැන් සිග්නල් හර්බල් 99ක් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල සමග සටන් කරයි. හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday the 22nd of December 2022. Boosting trade. Government to set up an international trade office and get Sri Lanka and Singapore FTA operational. Manageable. While Sri Lanka waits assurances from its non-Paris Club creditors, Central Bank Governor says Sri Lanka can manage with its export proceeds, worker remittances and support from the ADB and World Bank. No tug of war. President Ranil Wickremesinghe says all government officials should fulfill their responsibilities properly when serving the people.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. Now in top story for tonight, under the instructions of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, measures are being taken to set up an international trade office and synchronize all institutions related to external trade of the country. The first task of the ITO will be to ensure free trade agreements between Sri Lanka and Singapore are operational, while also resuming negotiations with China, India and Thailand. The government has decided to reorganize the existing conventional institutional setup and newly establish the International Trade Office to interconnect all the relevant institutions and synergize their work to obtain maximum output from the external trade sector to the national economy. The government also expects the move to integrate into South Asia and then expand to the east, including China, Indonesia, Thailand, linking to the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which consists of 30% of the world's GDP, trade and population. As such, the government has decided to recognize the existing conventional institutional setup and establish the International Trade Office. Once the ITO is established through the Act of Parliament, it will be headed by an ambassador for international trade, supported by an eminent group of advisors who has expertise in international trade. The core structure of the institutional will consist of designated officers from all the relevant institutions attached to it. As announced in the 2023 budget speech, the ITO will initially be established under the Ministry of Finance and will be amalgamated into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to implement Sri Lanka's foreign trade development policy across the world with enhanced and effective coordination. Until the establishment of the ITO is fully completed, the core staff of the institution have been built up at the Presidential Secretariat immediately to start functioning. According to the PMD, the first task of the ITO will be to take immediate measures to get the Sri Lanka and Singapore FTA in operation. The joint committee set up in accordance with the FTA, comprising designated officials from both countries, will meet in January next year and finalize the terms and agreements required to get the FTA operational. In parallel, by next year January, the ITO will resume negotiations of the 3 FTAs with India, China and Thailand. The 12th round of negotiations with India, the 7th round of negotiations with China and the 3rd round of negotiations with Thailand will be held during the first 2 months of 2023. It is planned to complete these negotiations possibly within the next year. Stakeholder consultations will be held with relevant chambers, associations, before and after every round of negotiations in order to make them aware of the status of negotiations, as they are the ultimate beneficiaries of the FTAs with enhanced market access. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasized the importance of protecting Houghton Plains, adding that the government hopes to bring a new law to protect the Houghton Plains. Addressing the Nuwara District Development Committee meeting today, he said that steps are being taken to commence a cable car service between Patipola and Boraland for these visiting the world's end. Speaking further, President Wickremesinghe emphasized that the government officials should fulfill their responsibilities rather properly without engaging in a tug of war when serving the people.
The Nuwara District Development Committee meeting was held this morning under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
ලෝකාන්තයේ නැරඹීමට යාමේදී අපි උදේ පාන්දරේ ටිකට් ගත්තේ නැත්නම් වනජීවියක ඒ ලෝකාන්තය ඇතුළට ගිහිල්ලා පහමාත හැටි කියේ නැත්නම් ඒ ඉන්ධනය අපිට ටුවරිස්ට්ලාට ලබා ගැනීමට නොහැකියාවක් වෙනවා. මේකේ උදේ ගියාම උදේ 6ට පහමාට ගියාම පැයක් විතර යනවා ටිකට් ගන්න. ඒ එතන කවුන්ටරේ දෝෂයක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි ඉල්ලීමක් කරන්නේ වනජීවියකින් ඒ ටිකට් ඉෂුව කිරීම නුවරඑළියේ තියෙන හෝටල් වලට හෝ නගර සභාවට හෝ ලබා දෙන්න අපි මුදල් ගෙවලා අරගෙන ඒ ටුවරිස්ට්ලාට ඒ මුදල් ගෙවන්න තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව ඒ ටිකට් එකකට කොරියන්ස්ලා දෙන්නකොට 24,000 වගේ මුදලක් යනවා. ඊට අමතරව මෙන් වාහනයක් අරගෙන යනකොට රුපියල් 20000ක් විතර යනවා. ඉතින් ලොකු මුදලක් යන ඉඳ දැනට පිටින් එන සංචාරකයෝ ලෝකාන්තයේ නැරඹීමේ යාමේ අපහසුතාවයක් යනවා. රුපියල් 40000 45000 මුදලක් යන නිසා.
හෝටන් තැන්න නුවරඑළිය මහනගර සභාවට අයිති එකක් නෙමෙයි. අපි දැන් වෙනම කොමිටියක් දාලා තියෙනවා. මේ යෝජනා ටිකත් ඒ කොමිටියට බාර දෙන්න. අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලා හෝටන් තැන්න ආරක්ෂා කරන්න ඕනේ. I'm going to make Horton Plains a living entity. Then there will be more controls on Horton Plains. අන්තිමට මිනිස්සුගෙන් හම්බ කරනවා මේක නැති වුණාම පරිසරය මේ කියන්නේ ලංකාවේ උඩම තියෙන තැන. highest elevation. මේකට හානියක් වුණත් අපි ඔක්කොමට අනික හැමතැනම හානියක්. මම මෙතෙන්ට ආවැද්දී මේ තිබුණේ ප්‍රශ්න වලින් 50% 60ක් විසඳන්න තිබුණේ. මගෙන් අහන්නේ ඒවා නෙමෙයි. මේ දෙපාර්තමේන්තු කඹා දිනවා. මේ ඔක්කොම ආණ්ඩුව එක කොටසක්. ඔයගොල්ලෝ වැඩ කරන්නේ යුක්‍රේනු රුසියාව වගේ ගහගන්න. ඒ නිසා මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මේගොල්ලෝ ඔක්කොම එකට එකතු වෙලා වැඩ කරලා ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන එවන්න කියලා. ඊළඟ සැරේ ඉඳන් මේ ප්‍රශ්න දුන්නාම ප්‍රශ්න මොනවාද කියලා ඒවට විසඳුම් එක්ක අපිට එවන්න. මම එන්නේ ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේ ප්‍රශ්න ඔක්කොම ඒ දිස්ත්‍රික්කේ නැත්තම් කොළඹින් විසලා දාන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට මෙහාට ඇවිල්ලා ටිකක් දීර්ඝකාලීන ප්‍රශ්න මෙහි කතා කරන්න ඕනේ.
Now, Lanka Tamil Arasu Kutchi parliamentarian M.A. Sumanthiran says that discussions with the president on solving ethnic issues are moved forward smoothly, but its success can only be measured once the promises are fulfilled. Addressing media following the meeting with the president, Sumanthiran said that the meeting focused on the release of 5 political prisoners and obtaining the Attorney General's advice on the release of the remaining prisoners. Another round of discussions between the Tamil political parties and President Ranil Wickremesinghe was held at the Presidential Secretariat last evening.
දේශපාලන සිරකරුවන් නිදහස් සම්බන්ධව සාකච්ඡා කරා. එතනින් අඳුරාගත්ත 5 දෙනෙක් වගේ දැනටම නිදහස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. අනිත් අය ගැන නීතිපතිවරයා උපදෙස් දෙනවා කියලා කිව්වා කොහොමද ඒක කරන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක. ඉඩම් නිදහස් කරන්න සම්බන්ධව හමුදාවත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරලා තියෙනවලු. ජනවාරි මාසයේ 3 වෙනිදා National Security Council meeting එකේදී ඒ recommendations කීපයක් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා ඒකට අවසර දෙනවා කියලා කිව්වා. ඉන්පසුව අනිත් ඉඩම් ගැන අපි සාකච්ඡා කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා තීරණය කරා. නැවත ජනවාරි මාසයේ 5 වෙනිදා අපි හම්බෙලා ඉදිරි වැඩ කටයුතු ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරනවා. සාකච්ඡාව නම් සාතකයි. හැබැයි ඒකෙන් තාම මොනවත් වෙලා නැහැ. ඒවා ඊට කරන වෙලාවේ තමයි ඒක සාතකද නැත්ද කියලා අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි සාකච්ඡාවේදී ගැටලුවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ.
Now, the governor of the central bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, says that Sri Lanka would have been able to repay its loans if the money borrowed had been used to enhance the country's capacity instead of spending it locally. During an interview with The Hindu, the governor said that while Sri Lanka waits assurances from its non-Paris Club creditors, the country will be able to manage with its export proceeds from worker remittances and support from the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, stated that Sri Lanka is waiting for financing assurances from its bilateral creditors, including India and China, to tap support from the International Monetary Fund. Dr. Veerasinghe added that Sri Lankan authorities shared all possible information with its bilateral creditors on an open, comparable and transparent basis. He went on to say that they expect the creditors to look at the information presented, make their decisions internally and revert back to Sri Lankan authorities as soon as possible. The governor went on to say that from the time the Sri Lankan government entered the provisional agreement with the IMF, India has underscored the need for creditor equitability and transparency. However, the governor stated that after the creditors provide financing assurances, it would likely take the IMF board 4 to 6 weeks to approve the package. Meanwhile, Dr. Veerasinghe said that Sri Lanka can now manage without bridge financing, as the country has been doing so since July. He explained that Sri Lanka can manage with its export proceeds, worker remittances and some support from the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. The governor further went on to say that Sri Lanka has debt service commitments to the tune of $6 billion a year for the next several years and that Sri Lanka is looking at negotiating a way to repay the loan amounts over the next 20 years rather than the next 4 to 5 years. Reflecting on Sri Lanka's past tendency in borrowings, he deemed the habit of borrowing externally and spending locally, rather than using the funds to boost the country's capacity, a mistake, noting that such practice would have equipped Sri Lanka to repay the loans from its own earnings. Now, one of the coal power plants of the Norachole power plant generating 200 megawatts will be closed down from tomorrow. According to the Ceylon Electricity Board, the decision was made to manage the coal stocks and also to routine maintenance. CB said that the loss of power will be covered by other available sources. They added that there will be no change in the existing 2-hour and 20-minute power cuts. The Sri Lankan High Commission in Canada, Harsha Kumara Navaratna, reiterated that Sri Lanka's commitment for a healthy and sustainable planet, delivering the country's statement at the high-level segment of COP15 recently. Navaratna stated that Sri Lanka is endowed with a wide variety of ecosystems, making it one of the most biologically diverse countries in the Asian region, despite its small size. He also emphasized the need to have in-place effective instruments and mechanisms to safeguard the biodiversity status quo of the island nations like Sri Lanka and recognize the closer partnership enhance regional cooperation to support the transition of maritime transport and fisheries sectors towards a new plastics-free future.
Sri Lanka accepts the direct drivers of biodiversity loss are land, sea use change, overexploitation, climate change, pollution and invasive alien species which require regional level solution. Apart from those direct and common drivers of biodiversity loss, Sri Lanka being an island state, we are also uniquely and increasingly influenced by the transboundary air and marine pollution. This underscores the urgent need of having in place effective instrument and mechanism of safeguarding biodiversity of island nation like Sri Lanka. Such initiative may be voluntary commitments or legally binding instrument. In this regard, we would like to recognize Global Partnership to enhance regional cooperation to support transition of maritime transport and fisheries sector towards low plastic future. Also, we support the Regional Resource Center for Asia Pacific and AIT in their effort of revising the Malé Declaration on control of prevention of air pollution and its like transboundary effect for South Asia. Sri Lanka is always ready to stand with the international community for healthy and sustainable planet. In terms of high-level political ambition, I would emphasize on the need to support sustainable coexistence of communities and ecosystem in terms of financial and capacity building intervention. Poverty and livelihood need are key social drivers negatively impacting biodiversity in developing countries such as Sri Lanka. We would like to support it by the including financial mechanism established under the convention. Sri Lanka support the upcoming post-2020 global biodiversity framework with more realistic and implementable targets, and we strengthen South-South, North-South and a triangular cooperation in coming decade.
Now stay with us for more news as we will bringing the latest updates on the investigations pertaining to the controversial murder of businessman Dinesh Shafter.
It's hard to keep up with the new when you're listening to the same old Slim Bread Week, a week for professionals.
Welcome back. Now, the police media spokesperson Nihal Taldur says that the CID has recorded statements from 58 persons so far pertaining to the investigations conducted over the death of businessman Dinesh Shafter. However, he said that they are yet to identify a suspect.
The investigations conducted by the Homicide and Organised Crime Division of the Criminal Investigation Department over the controversial murder of prominent businessman Dinesh Shafter have revealed that Shafter had left home on the 15th, informing his wife that he will be attending a meeting. However, earlier, it was revealed that Shafter had informed the Chief Executive Officer who located him that he will be meeting Brian Thomas. It was also revealed that Shafter had left home at 1:57 p.m. that day and had reached the Borella Cemetery roundabout at around 2:13 p.m. The police also said he has not called anyone from his mobile phone since 1:51 p.m.
මේ වන විට පුද්ගලයන් 58 දෙනෙකුගෙන් පමණ සාක්ෂි සටහන් කරලා තියෙනවා අදාළ විමර්ශන කොට්ටාශය විසින්. විවිධ ශේෂ්ත්‍රයන් ඔස්සේ විමර්ශන පවත්වනවා. තෙක් කරන ලද විමර්ශනවලදී ඝාතනය සම්බන්ධව සැක කරනු ලබන පුද්ගලයෙක් පිළිබඳ අනාවරණ වීමක් මෙතෙක් සිදු වී නැහැ. කෙසේ වුවත් විමර්ශන කටයුතු පැය 24 පුරාම ක්‍රියාත්මක වනවා. කඩිනමින් සැකකරු අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග තමයි මේ වන විට ගනිමින් සිටින්නේ.
Now, the Ministry of Education announced today that all government and government-approved private schools will be closed from today till the 1st of January 2023 in view of Christmas and the New Year. Issuing a release in this regard, the ministry also noted that the first phase of the third term ends from today. The ministry also added that the second phase of the third term is scheduled to commence on the 2nd of January next year. Now, the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka donated 5 million rupees to the Defence Ministry towards the development of the National Cadet Corps. The donation has been presented by the Defence Attaché of the Chinese embassy in Colombo, Senior Colonel Wan Dong, to the Defence Ministry General Kamal Gunaratne at the Defence Ministry yesterday. The Defence Ministry has also mentioned that the donation was made with the intention to augment the development of training of the NCC in order to produce a well-disciplined youth and future leaders to the country. Now, in your business news, the Sri Lanka Export Board Development signed a memorandum of understanding with the Swiss Import Promotion Program, which operates under the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs of Switzerland today, to carry out comprehensive market research studies for selected Sri Lankan export product sectors that are aiming to better integrate Sri Lanka into world trade. Now, the Swiss ambassador in Colombo, Dominic Fergler, and chairman of the Export Development Board, Suresh Dimel, signed this MOU on behalf of the respective organizations. The Swiss Import Promotion Program facilitates the EDB to carry out comprehensive market research studies for selected Sri Lankan export product sectors, including processed food, sustainable fish and seafood, and value-added textiles, aiming to better integrate Sri Lanka into worldwide trade. It will conduct these market research studies through competent international sector experts to provide first-hand information on market access requirements to the member countries of the European Free Trade Association, including Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, and selected EU countries. The proposed market studies will cover the areas of present trade regulations, non-tariff measures and technical regulations, market access requirements, packaging and labeling, quality standards and certifications, trade-related environmental and social requirements, pricing, logistics, information on distribution channels and market demand analysis related to each selected sector for the identified markets in the EU region. The sectoral market study reports will also include details of main buyers in the identified countries, and this will result in Sri Lankan exporters to expand market access and enhance market share in the European region. Currently, over 6,000 products are eligible for zero-duty access to the EU region under the EU GSP Plus scheme. According to EDB, Sri Lanka has the potential to expand the market share by entering into new and untapped markets, enjoying the zero-duty market access offered to the EU GSP Plus scheme. Now, at the Colombo Bourse today, shares fell for the sixth session as investor sentiments taken on speculation of local debt restructuring and a delay in the IMF deal. The all-share price index closed 0.27% lower at 8,397.12. The S&P SL20 index closed 0.42% lower at 2,642.81. The market witnessed a turnover of 1.9 billion rupees, half of this year's daily average turnover of 2.9 billion rupees. In the meantime, the market saw a net foreign inflow of 869 million rupees. The total net foreign inflow stood at 31 billion rupees so far for this year. Expo Lanka, in the meantime, pulled the index down to close at 2.4%, low at 193 rupees. Aitken Spence fell 2.3% to close at 127 rupees, and John Keel's closed 1% lower at 138 rupees a share. Now let's take a look at how the rupee fared against other major currencies in the world. Now oil prices climbed for a fourth straight day to hit their highest in 2.5 weeks today, with the US crude, heating oil and jet fuel stocks growing tighter just as a wintry blast hits the United States. Brent crude futures were 32 cents and $82.52, extending gains of around 2.7% from the previous session, but losing some steam from earlier in the session. US West Texas Intermediate crude were up by 33 cents or 0.4% at $78.62 a barrel. Both benchmark contracts jumped on Wednesday after government data showed US crude inventories fell by much more than analysis had expected, posting a drop of 5.89 million barrels for the week ending on the 16th of December. The falling stockpiles came as demand for heating oil is set to soar with a powerful winter storm hitting the US, with sub-zero wind chills expected as far as Texas and record-breaking forecast for Florida. Now with Christmas, one of the most waited for holidays just around the corner, the hope and spirit of Christmas lives not in mere seasonal shopping, but rather in helping the poor and marginalized. Here's our seasonal segment, The Message of Hope.
Christmas is identified as the feast of hope. What was the hope? To see the face of God. But this was actually an event took place 2000 years ago. But then how can you and I see the face of God today? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Jesus himself revealed to us the secret. And he said, if you want to see me, if you want to see my face, look at the poor, look at the suffering, look at the marginalized, hospitalized, and those who are in prison. Inside them, I continue to live. In their eyes, you can see my face. Christmas is nothing but to see the face of God in the people who go through various suffering. And this year, that is why, especially the Catholic Church with the Catholic Bishop Conference, recognize Christmas as the feast of the poor, and to spend Christmas with the poor. That is the meaning of Christmas. We wish you therefore a very joyful and a meaningful
That's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.